Aloha everyone. Hope you guys are doing amazing. I'm here in Kona at the place that I have here in Kona, and we had a scheduled Facebook Live, just wrapped up Huna. We were at our Huna workshop, 57th Huna workshop, and 57, twice a year, 57 times. I don't know, you do the math on that. I think it's something like 28 years or something like that. It was an amazing group. An absolutely incredible group, had a fantastic time. And the topic for the Facebook Live today is all about self-forgiveness. It's all about self-forgiveness. It's a big part of the Hawaiian culture, that idea of forgiveness. And the word that comes from Hawaii here is pono. The word pono. Pono means to be right with yourself. It doesn't mean right as in I'm right, you're wrong. It means right as in having an unwavering congruency in who you are. When you're pono with someone, nothing else needs to be said. There's nothing else that you need to say when you're pono. When you're right with someone else, it's like the connection between you and that other person is solid. So how do you become pono, right? How do you become right with yourself? Well, the way you become right with yourself, in part, is through forgiveness. And in fact, forgiveness was a cornerstone here in Hawaii. You had to forgive. There was no option to forgive, because let's handle one really quick thing. You only hurt one person by holding on to unforgiveness. You hurt you. You hurt yourself. And so the reason why this Facebook Live topic is so important is because to become pono, to become right with yourself, you need to be able to do forgiveness. You have to forgive other people. 3 things that you could do wrong from a cultural perspective here in Hawaii. The first one is hala. Hala is to miss the path. You think you should be going this way and you find out the path is actually over there. Okay, that's a simple one. Heva is to go overboard. Heva is to do excess. So, for example, getting overly excited. Like I remember one time I was teaching a training and I got so motivated when I went in that there were some people in the audience that were like, "Whoa, you gotta tone it back a notch. You gotta just like chill out a little bit." So Heva is to go overboard. Then you have ino. Ino is when there's intention behind it, and ino means intent. Can include doing harm, but it could just be getting someone back. It could just be getting someone back for something that they did. Now, when I teach the practitioner trainings all around the world, and my team is in Las Vegas right now teaching a practitioner training. I'm going to be in San Diego next week teaching a practitioner training. We go out there and I teach Ho'oponopono to groups, and in these groups, most people are like clued in on it. They're like, I got it. I need to do some forgiveness with this person that wronged me, this person that ran over my boundaries, you name it. And a bunch of people always come up to me in every single event and say, how do I forgive myself? How do I forgive myself for something that has gone on in the past? Maybe you weren't at your best. Maybe you yelled at the kids. You missed an opportunity. I remember when I had this opportunity to do an investment and I didn't do it. And then I beat myself up later on for it. I mean, missing an opportunity with a loved one, missing an opportunity to say goodbye to someone before they leave. Here's the deal. We have to learn how to forgive ourselves. We need to learn how to forgive ourselves through the process of Ho'oponopono, which my 5th book is titled Ho'oponopono, and it's all about forgiveness. By forgiving others, you do forgive yourself, because forgiveness is a 2-way street. So those of you who have learned Ho'oponopono from me, one of my team members or one of my students, forgiveness is a 2-way street. So by forgiving others, you are forgiving yourself. So that forgiveness goes in both directions. And yet sometimes we still beat ourselves up. Let's use a parenting example. I'm a dad. And my son's off at college right now. We were actually text messaging today about one of his classes. And as a dad, I've just always done my best. And there have been a couple of times where I look back at it and I feel like I could have done better. I feel like I could have been a little bit more understanding. I could have been a little bit more calm in my delivery. In other words, I look back at that moment and I review it and I think I could have handled this in a better way. That's the process of beating yourself up. So the process of beating yourself up or installing guilt or creating what's called unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is, like a revenge motivation or an avoidance motivation. To do that, what you do is you learn something. I know some of you, if I've never met you, you're sitting there going, why is he teaching me how to create guilt? Because if you understand how to create something, you can avoid it. That's a very important thing, right? So if you understand how guilt is created, you can totally avoid doing it. So the way you create guilt, the way you create unforgiveness, is you get a learning, you receive a lesson. Maybe you go out and you learn an NLP technique where you have better communication, and then you look in the past and you say, I should have been better that day. The problem is, the Hawaiians called these learnings, they called the learnings an unno ai. Unno, a seed, ai, to eat it. And unno ai is a seed that when you receive that knowledge in the day, what you're meant to do is you're meant to plant that seed, like you're planting the seed in a garden, and nurture it and have it grow. You don't sit there and look at your hand and go, I should have had this seed a year ago or 10 years ago. Okay, so if you learn how to have better rapport with your kids, for example, at an NLP training, and then you look back and you think, I had terrible moments with my kids 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you're installing guilt and you're actually creating a pattern of beating yourself up. That's the opposite of forgiveness. There's a beautiful saying that comes from NLP, and it's called the presuppositions of NLP, and the specific one is that you're doing the best you can with the resources you have. That the idea is that in that moment, you're doing just the best you can. And that's what I want you guys to remember. Self-forgiveness starts, number one, with realizing that you didn't know everything back then. You didn't know everything as a teenager. Maybe you would have done things differently. You didn't know everything as a young adult, as an early parent. You learned things along the way. And in those moments, even the worst moments, you're doing the best you can. You really are. You're taking the tools that you have, applying them in the best way possible, and achieving the best possible result. I had a student say, well, what if I knew certain things? And in the moment, I got so angry that I wasn't able to control my state. I wasn't able to maintain my focus. That can happen. That for sure, for all of us. It's happened to me with my kids, at work, you name it. I still believe in that moment you were doing the best you could. That an older version of you may have even acted worse, or that at the very least you didn't go to an extreme. I know that some people do, and our minds can go there. And for the most part, people tend to be able to navigate the dark moments in their life sometimes even just by hanging on, just by clinging, and to hold on to that one thing that helps you get through it. When you look back at it, you can always second guess. Oh, I should have done it this way. I could have done it this way. Rather than looking back at it and going, I was doing the best I could in that moment. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is, rather than reviewing your memories in a way that causes you to think, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, you remind yourself in that moment, I was just doing the best that I could. And this new lesson that I got, I'm going to plant it in the now. How am I going to make that work into the future? How am I going to help it to grow and evolve? The second thing that you want to do to really facilitate self-forgiveness is you want to begin to do a practice of gratitude. A daily practice of gratitude really helps out a lot. Now, here's the deal. You can't just be like, oh, I'm grateful because there's a blue sky. I live here in Hawaii. I also get to spend a good portion of my time living in San Diego. I have a home there in Carlsbad, and we have beautiful skies there. So, you're grateful for it. Now, if you live in an area where you only see blue skies like once a year, sure, then you can use gratitude in that moment. I'm talking about going deeper with gratitude. Like, I'm grateful that my daughter loves me and she gives me a hug. But why? What you want to do is you want to ask, in those moments where you're practicing gratitude, why? Why are you grateful about that? Not just, I'm grateful that my daughter gave me a hug on the way in. No. Why specifically am I grateful that today my daughter gave me a hug and said, Daddy, have a good day? And I'm like, you have a good day in school too. The reason why is because as an 11-year-old, with everything else that she could be doing, she decided to give me a hug. She decided to hug me, and in that moment, both of us stopped thinking about anything else and just focused in on each other. Now that's gratitude. That's a practice of gratitude, not just going, oh, yeah, I'm grateful I got a hug, or I'm grateful that so-and-so opened a door for me. I'm grateful that that person let me in while I was driving rather than cutting me off. Those are surface level. If you are truly grateful because that person allowed you to get in front of them on the highway, on the road, why? Ask the question why. What that does is it causes you to truly contemplate what is amazing about this experience. What is amazing about it? Today, my daughter giving me a hug. Here, I'm grateful for another thing today. I'm grateful that tonight, Friday night, that I get to take my girl out and have a nice dinner with her. We call it a father-daughter date. And I'm even more grateful. I got a little bit of emotion right there coming up. It's a good emotion, positive. She asked for it. She asked for the father-daughter date. It's something that we've been doing since she was a kid. We call it a father-daughter date. And she asked for it. She said, do we get to go on one of these? I'm grateful because I'm still able to maintain that connection with her, even though she started calling herself a preteen just a little while ago. Do any of you guys have teenagers, preteens? I got a 19-year-old who's in college, and now I have a girl that's referring to herself as a preteen. Whew. Just felt like I got old there for a moment. Anyway, you forgive yourself for the negative things, and then you got to build up a stockpile of positive. Building up a stockpile of positive. It's like you're tipping the scales. The next big thing for self-forgiveness is not just the practice of gratitude, but really, what do you do when you review the end of the day? I love Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra, really cool suggestion that he had to a group. And my wife used to teach with Deepak for 10 years, amazing individual, game changer on this planet. And he says, at the end of every day, if you do a little bit of recapitulation is reviewing what you went through in the day and highlighting some of the amazing things. Not only does it help out with your memory, as a doctor of integrative psychology, I can tell you that if you spend time every day reviewing the positive, you start to forget the negative, right? So you forgive, we talked about that already, number one. You practice gratitude every day, which begins to have you focus in on positive aspects of the day. And at the end of every day, in addition to doing ho'oponopono, at the end of every day, do a little bit of recapitulation. So at the end of our Italy trip, we got back from Italy, July 4th. So probably July 2nd or July 3rd, Tris, my wife, Ethan, my son, and Skylar, my daughter, the four of us, we stood in the kitchen at the house that we have in Italy, and we went around in a circle. And what was your favorite part of Italy? And then Ethan said something, and then Tris, and then Skylar, and then me, and then Ethan, and we went around. And sometimes Ethan would say something, and Skylar would be like, I was going to say that next. And I would go, Skylar, you can also say it, but what's a different reason why you liked that moment? Ethan's like, I loved when we went to the beach together, and we were just hanging out. And Skylar's like, oh, I love the beach too. Why did you love it, Ethan? And why did you love it, Skylar? That recapitulation at the end of the Italy trip helped me to remember some things that I had forgotten, and it teaches my mind to focus on the positive. We live in a world that perpetuates negativity. And look, I dedicate a huge chunk of my time, and I've dedicated my life to helping empower the planet. I know many of you who have logged in here do that as well, and I appreciate you guys because we can't do that alone. And we have so much negativity out there in the news, on Facebook, in our face around the world. It's just, we have a level of negativity. And yes, I want to make this world a better place. And you do it by bringing some light in. You do it by bringing some light in. And that recapitulation helps you review what you've gone through in the day from a positive standpoint to begin to tip that scale. So the idea is that if the scale is weighed down with the negative, from an unconscious mind perspective, your unconscious mind is going to begin to see the negative. You're going to filter for the negative. You see a situation, you see an old man crossing the street, and rather than seeing him smile, you see an old guy, and you're like, oh, maybe he's in pain, or I feel bad for him. The negativity, as it builds up, what happens is, if you hold on to negative memories, what occurs is a system gets clicked in called the reticular activating system. And if you begin to think that the world is an ugly place, that's all you see. The RAS, or the reticular activating system, is a part of your mind that Like, have you ever wanted to buy a new car? You're sitting there and you're like, oh, I want to buy a, I don't know, Tesla, an Audi, whatever, a Toyota. I want to buy a new car. And then you begin to see it everywhere, right? I remember when Triss, my wife, she's like, I want to buy an Audi. I started seeing Audis everywhere. I didn't want the Audi, but she did. And I began to see it everywhere. So did she. They were already there. The reticular activating system clicked in and causes you to begin to see it. Okay, so back to forgiveness and negativity. After you've done forgiveness and you're practicing gratitude, you need to begin to tip the scale, because if you have an abundance of focus on the negative, you're teaching your unconscious mind to sort for that. Look for the negative, listen for the negative, go for the negative. If you begin to tip that scale and you focus in on the positive through recapitulation, and the scale begins to tip, what happens is you begin to find yourself leaning more in the positive with situations. So something negative might happen. Someone cuts you off on the road as you're driving. And rather than sitting there and going, that guy's a jerk, instead of that, you think, maybe they're in a rush, maybe there's an emergency. Maybe there isn't. You know what, at the end of the day, I would rather have a positive focus and lean in the positive than lean in the negative. I hope you guys would agree with that. Leaning into the positive, what that does is it builds up like a bank. It's like you're putting a deposit into the bank of positive. And when that happens, when you're putting that positive into the bank, when you go and experience a situation and the reticular activating system kicks in, it's looking for the positive instead of looking for the negative. That's just the way it is. So 3 things that I would recommend that you do. The 3 things are, number 1, as you're practicing self-forgiveness, you remind yourself that you're just doing the best you can with the resources you have. That the things that you experienced in the past, you were doing as best you could. These new things that you learn, these tools in the moment, you put them into the future, now and into the future. Number 2, set up a daily practice of gratitude and go deeper. Go deeper than just sitting there and saying, yeah, I'm grateful that blank. No, why? Answer the question why to help you begin to shift your focus. Then the third thing that you want to do is you want to begin to do a little bit of recapitulation at night, so that as you look back at the things that you went through in the day, you start filtering for the positive. It becomes an unconscious behavior. Your forgiveness, your gratitude, and your recapitulation, when it becomes unconscious, well, then you get kind of into that autopilot mode, but a good autopilot, where that autopilot mode is steering you towards the positive and helping you have an amazing experience. Cool. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. Thought it'd be a fun topic, especially just coming right out of Huna. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And the next time I'll be seeing you, I think I'll be in California. We're heading out to San Diego. Going to be teaching a practitioner training in San Diego, and then we're going to be doing an Empowering Your Life weekend. I think we're up in Los Angeles for that, helping people let go of some negative emotions, limiting beliefs, and doing some forgiveness in there. We're going to be doing Ho'oponopono at both of them. So if you're going to be there, I look forward to seeing you there. I'm going to be at those 2 events. And then, hey, we head into our fall workshop, Master Prac. Okay? Have an amazing time, you guys. Hope you have an enjoyable rest of the day and a great weekend. Aloha.